All right. Welcome to Milonga Mascarita, the podcast. Let me just make sure I'm recording here. Oh, yes, I'm recording. All right. I'm Ray Rudowski, the creator and host from Hong Kong here. And this is the podcast where we look at the issues, the personalities, the backstories in Argentina tango today. And I'm very happy to have author and very special guest, Maria Finn, who wrote the book Hold Me Tight and Tango Me Home, which is a personal memoir, but it's really about the theme that we want to talk about, which is the dancer's journey. And helping me in this is Fiona Szeto from Hong Kong, Milonguera dancer. And the story behind this is that in this situation, she was the one who introduced me to the book when we bumped into each other on the train a few days ago and said, "Oh, I'm reading this book. I think you'll find it interesting." And then I looked up the author, contacted Maria, and Maria was like, "Yeah, I'd love to talk about it." So here we are. So the book came out, Maria, in 2010, but
Yes.
every sort of dancer's journey has a series of story arcs in terms of there's usually some sort of event that sort of puts um, the hero into this sort of story arc. For you, what was that event, and how did the book come about?
Well, yeah, it was. I found out that my husband was cheating on me, which I think is probably, in tango, I think the heartbreak is a catalyst for a lot of people. so, so I, so that was it. I was very heartbroken, and I had danced salsa a lot with my husband, and so I wanted to, I wanted to just throw myself into something that that might make me feel better or forget about it or offer offer a new life in a certain way, I think.
And how did that end up being part of a bigger story in terms of a book? You're the author of 8 books, and you're a nutritionist and food and wine expert, film critic. How did this suddenly inspire you to not only dance, but write about that journey?
Well, I have to say it was so profound. Like tango is a very profound journey. I think as an adult, learning something new that you are an amateur at is always sort of humbling and exciting and kind of humiliating. We're very vulnerable, and so I think that there's something in that vulnerability, that beginner's sort of experience, that it was very profound. And the teachers were such characters, it was just something that, that when, and you're a tango teacher, so these things that come out of their mouths, you're like, did they really just say that? That they are life lessons that extend far beyond the dance classroom. So I just started writing stuff down, just writing down what they were saying, what I was learning, because it just felt really profound and really kind of beautiful. There's something incredibly about all dances exciting, with the Argentine tango in particular. Is there's a lot of poetry in it.
When you look at the idea of tango from salsa, there's often this idea that salsa is much more accessible. I mean, you walk into any salsa night, and like 15 minutes later, you're dancing salsa, and people are asking you to dance. Whereas with Argentine tango, I love the part at the very beginning when you talk about the guy with the slicked back hair who's the teacher, who has given this talk at the beginning of the class a million times, but still struggles to decide what he wants to say. I mean, that's just so Argentine. It's like they know the stuff inside out, but they do struggle with the material in terms of how to convey it to new students.
Well, that's, I had a teacher and a friend named Mello in the tango world. And a lot of people know Nay in this world, but he is from New York City and he also dances salsa. But he used to say, or he still says, that salsa is like checkers and tango is like chess. So I think they're both very different journeys. I had a salsa journey and it was phenomenal. And to me, salsa is there's a lot of joy in it. And that's what I tell people. Look, if you don't have a lot of time to commit, go learn a different dance. Salsa is a ton of fun. You can be out on the dance floor having a good time pretty quickly. Tango, you have to commit to that. That's it's a big commitment. and it's worth it. But you know that it's realistically, yeah, you need to go about 3 times a week, you know, and you need to do it for several months before you can even think about going to Milonga.
Fiona, you introduced me to the book. How did you get to the book, and how relatable is the story to your own experiences?
Right. So it was an coincidence that one of my friends has got the book, and that was circulated among our friends because we found it is very interesting. I think I'm the third person that I'm aware of is reading the book, and I find it very interesting is that, you know, the journey that Maria got through, how she encountered tango at the beginning, like as you know, the first time that she went to the classes and met quite a few friends in there. And what struck me most, and the first time that put me on a smile while I was reading the book, was there is a session that talked about that Maria went on a shopping, and she was looking for shoes and dresses, and the mindset that a dancer will go through is exactly the same of how I had back in the days. Like, okay, we need to think about any time when we do shop, we need to think about whether the dresses are tango danceable. So it make it, you know, work in both ways, you know, casual or business, and at the same time that we could wear it at work. And to be honest, some of my workplace clothes is actually tango clothes. It's on the bag, but I've got my jacket on, so my colleagues will be able to see it. So I think these are the little things that I think is very relatable to how I go through this tango journey. And especially like Maria also went to Buenos Aires, which I also went there in 2017, which is about 7 years ago, for a month. And, you know, there are occasions that, of course, Spanish is a necessity to speak as a conversational language. So I recall in some of the milongas, in order to get very good seats, we need to make a reservation. And I have been in Spanish lessons some years ago for a year, but of course that is not very practical in a tango scenario. So I had asked my friend, I actually last night I did a little bit of work that I still remember. There is one phrase that I use. I recall that, if I could say that, I'm not too sure if I say it right. I recall I said, por favor, reservar para esta noche 5 asientos. I recall that I made use of that. And when I see some of the Spanish dialogue that was quoted in there, I found it's so close to the heart, as if it brought me back to the dance floor in Buenos Aires. And there are so much scenarios that in the book that has portrayed, you know, the regular tango life that we had in Hong Kong, not just in Hong Kong, in other cities as well. You know, how a first or a beginner started a journey by going to Practica, and how eager that they want to go to Milonga. And at the very beginning, how we don't want to wear shiny shoes because we don't want the eyes to look at us. We are not yet there. We want to stay low profile. You know, all these feelings and experience is just bring back all the great memories that we have as we first learned and as we still continue the tango journey.
Maria, who did you write the book for? It sounds like you wrote it exclusively for Fiona.
You know, so this is the thing too with my tango journey. It was a lot of humility. Like I don't have a dance background. This was not something that came easy to me. And so I think it's for all those people, you know, it's for everybody that it's like, okay, this is scary, but we're going to do it. You know, there's something in this we need. And even just buying the dresses and buying these shoes and these clothes we wouldn't have done before tango, those are all acts of transformation. You know, so when when you talk about the journey is really about how do we transform and the different ways we transform, and the shopping for the shoes and the clothes, especially when you find yourself in Buenos Aires doing that, you know, it's really about this external signaling of our transformation of kind of who we're becoming. And I remember, I had a lesson with La Leona in Buenos Aires, and she was a marvelous dancer, marvelous teacher, and it was for women, and it was like a lady styling followers class, or not women but followers. And she used to say, love yourself enough to say no to bad dancers. And, and so something like that, it's like you can take that line and you can take that into anything. But so that's the way that tango transforms you, right? Is it's these little tiny pieces, just sort of piece by piece. And then you find yourself changing and becoming this other person. And I also realize, for me, that the theme of this book is not, and there's two like themes I wanted to battle, right? One of them is that you're going to go win a dance competition, because that's a lot of our dance movies, right? It's like, here you are, the beginner, the ugly duckling, odds are stacked against you, you're going to go win a competition. Because in the Argentine tango, I've never seen a dance competition. It's just not a part of it, really. And then the second one was to fall in love, that you were going to have a broken heart, and through dance, you're going to fall in love again. And so I just didn't really want to have those two be a theme. I have to say the book was optioned for a television series, and they hired a screenplay writer to do the pilot, and it was only romances and competitions. That was
Right.
everything that I was absolutely didn't want. Because for me, what I found was I went through my own transformation, was taking heartbreak and becoming a better person because of it. Not kind of an angry, bitter person because of it, but actually finding. I think tango is very heart opening. It's a lot of heart to heart, and also finding community. If you're in the tango community, anywhere you go in the world, you can go find a milonga. Pretty much anywhere. And it's a language we all have. So even if you don't speak Spanish and you find yourself in Buenos Aires, or you don't speak Cantonese and you're in China, you can go to milonga, and that's a language and a community we have across the world.
Well, one of the things that you talk about, one of the characters in the book says, it takes a village to create or produce a dancer. And
Yes.
I hadn't thought of that, but then I realized that in some of the events that I organize, especially the weekly practica, we get a lot of people that come in brand new, or they're friends of friends. And immediately, someone will explain the music, and someone will explain the first opening steps, and someone will explain the clothing, and someone will explain the history. And so suddenly this person is sort of taken in literally off the street and adopted literally by the people around them.
Oh yeah, and that's what I will always be grateful to the advanced dancers who danced with me when I was just beginning. That I will always have gratitude to those leaders who did that. And I am now, my new goal is to become a leader. So I want to be a follower, but I also want to know how to lead. And that's so I can show up, and if there's far more women than men, I can choose what role I want to do. And I will also remember that. I'll be like, there were a lot of the leaders who, when I showed up as a beginner, were very helpful. And I feel like similar thing for me as a follower, that like if somebody's showing up and they're putting a lot into it and they're really trying to learn, I am more than happy to help them along in that. And I think that we do have really great communities along those in that way.
How important along this tango journey, there's always this idea of the hero's journey where there's obstacles that one encounters along that journey. What were some of those obstacles that you encountered, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think impatience. I wanted to be good, and I wanted to be good right away. And it's just you have to put in the time. So I think that's an obstacle. I think for a female, oftentimes, in our society, surrendering is very difficult. I probably for males too, but I mean, this idea of surrender is very difficult. The idea of this idea that a follower is still 50%, so you're following, but you're 50%, you're half. Those are difficult things to kind of wrap your mind around. That like, how is that? How is it you have to surrender but be fully present at the same time? So I think those are definitely those were it. And yeah, I think just starting something new that I wasn't good at, and having to kind of be humble in that way was also sort of something that was difficult.
The book is divided, like the idea of the sort of the genre of the tango hero's journey has really been picked up in film, right? With the tango lesson, and then Carlos Saura's tango, and then the almost hilarious Robert Duvall assassination tango. I don't know if you ever saw that, where it's like the male tango dancer's journey, where he's stuck in, he's an assassin and he's supposed to kill some government official in Argentina, and the guy doesn't come back. So he's literally, the only thing he's got to kill is time. And so he ends up taking tango. That's the vehicle for it. But you took it slightly differently, and you divided your book into chapters based around movements, which increasingly become more complicated. Like you start out with the embrace and then the walk, and then these movements become more complicated as the chapters become more complicated.
Well, yeah, and any book you write, it starts with the structure, right? Like you kind of have to be thinking of what's your structure, what's your kind of, what are you going to put your beads on, for your necklace? And then you can, and so I've probably been writing quite a bit before I came up with that structure. So then it helps you organize the information, because when you're learning it, so much is coming in so quickly that organizing the information. And so while it's all true, it may have been like amalgamation of two different classes, right? Where this happened or something along those lines. So yeah, so it is a matter of kind of figuring out how to organize it. And then it's also, again, it's a profound dance. It's a profound and poetic dance that that each one of those moves, I just like the feeling, and Fiona, you may remember this, the feeling of your first time you did a volcata, where you're off your axis. It's like it. I'm so, it is. It's a remarkable feeling. And so how do you, so I go, you go home and you write about it. What does that feel like to, and I don't know, Fiona, what did that feel like to you?
Yeah, I think it was like very interesting to what Maria had just said, because what she said at almost every point is so echoing to what I experienced, because that's how a dancer would feel like, including currently, like Maria was saying, she would like to be a leader, and that was also a recent thought that I had in mind as well. And the vocada, that makes me remember one of my practicas, because at that time I haven't properly learned, and the lesson hasn't yet reached to that lesson, that topic. So we had one of some of my few friends together. We watched a YouTube video, and then we found that it was so interesting. So we want to know, how does it work? So we actually go to a practica and went to see some of the more senior dancers and ask them on how to do it. And the first time that how we do it, it is not a complete vocada. Of course, it's a small angle, pretending to be a vocada to make ourselves feel safe. And we find it very interesting, and also feeling very achieved after we'll be able to do it. I think in a tango journey, it's about exploring something, discovering something, and the weakness of oneself, and also be building your own confidence, as well as like to connect with people. I think all these are the good elements that make us want to stay in tango and want to perfect it and want to better it every day. So that's why I recall when I was a beginner, I dance almost 7 days a week. That includes going to practica and milonga. And similarly to Maria, I'm so thankful to all the experienced leaders who do not mind to dance with beginners like us. So I was a more privileged one, because at the time when I was learning tango, there wasn't a lot of followers. So I'm one of the few, and a lot of experienced leaders, I would say, it's almost like my mentors, and to help me excel in a very quick speed. So I'd be able to go, even actually, I didn't raise my hand to go to a milonga. It was my teacher who said that, just come along and see how it is, because it was at the time, my first milonga was heading to a place called Helena May, which is still there, but no longer is a tango place there, because it's basically a social venue that is for members, that for social gatherings, etc. But the dancing bit has been suspended, unfortunately. But that was a good old times that we had.
Marie, this brings up another point that you mentioned in the book, which kind of bounces from what Fiona just said, is where does this idea of a tango addiction? You hear this a lot in the tango journey where people kind of start out, and if they decide to stick with it, not everybody does. I mean, we get a lot of people through Practica and they come a few times and it's like, well, it's not for them, or they can't commit. But when they do commit, they don't just commit, they obsess.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just, I'm going to run the New York City Marathon and I'll train once a week. It's like, I'm going to train every day for like 7 hours a day, and I'm going to be like at the head of the pack. It's that mentality that drives a lot of the, shall we say, tango addiction.
Tango addiction. Yes, it's a real thing. In New York City, we used to call it the tango hole, where people would start and they're into it. Their friends would be like, "Where'd you go?" And they're like, "You're in the tango hole. You're not seeing your other friends. You're not doing your other stuff. You're just dancing tango." And well, I do think, I wrote a little bit about what tango does to your mind and sort of the releasing of the serotonins, the oxytocin, all of that, that it is physically addictive. Like it releases the same chemicals as highly addictive drugs. And but that said, it's also extremely good for you. Like they've done a lot of studies, and that it's considered one of the best exercises to ward off dementia and Alzheimer's. And I also think, a lot of us, especially now we're working remote or you live in a city, there's really this deep desire for connection, and touch. And so I think that there's something very, and it's a way to be intimate with a lot of formality. So you're safe. It's a safe intimacy. And so it's a very, I think, vital space for a lot of people, and that's what really pulls them into it, is that it's dance and it's fun and you want to get better at it. It is sort of chemically addictive, but it's also, a lot of people are kind of missing these things in their life, these connections, this intimacy. The other thing I found, when I was going through this very painful time in my life, is that we don't have a lot of space in the culture in the United States for sorrow. We just don't give people space for it. People are like, why don't you just get back online and internet date? And you're like, nobody wants to date this right now. Like this is a mess. And so people are like, well, what, be happy. And sometimes we aren't happy, and we need a space for sorrow, a space for melancholy. And I think the Argentine tango has the language for that and the music for that. And and I think it's okay to not feel happy all the time. I think it's good to have this exploration of these other very rich emotional journeys that people go through. And so I think that it is a way for people to not just bond and be happy, but to grieve and feel sorrow in a really safe, productive way.
I wanted to read something from the book, and get your comments on it, both of you. You write in regards to the chapters and how they're divided into all these tango movements. You say these fixed patterns set to melodies and harmonies give order in the chaos of emotions. Patterns are what we follow to find the source. And in tango, the source is why a person chooses the dance. What is the source?
I think the source, what is it? It probably is connection. I think somewhere, and I've written the line in there, that when you're heart to heart with someone in a tango, then you can feel all the good intentions of the human heart. And having a really good, great dance partner, someone you really connect with in that way, it's different than like a physical attraction. Like you're gonna have people you are not physically attracted to, but you have a really wonderful physical connection with when you're dancing. And I do think that humans really, we kind of have that, Plato split people in half kind of thing, this deep desire to connect with one another. And so I think when we have something like a heartbreak, there's something really reassuring about that, feeling that connection with another person through the heart, and very healing as well.
Is there anything, Fiona, that you kind of pick up from the idea of the source? What does the source mean for you?
I would think the connection and also the embrace. I think I don't know if you have heard, or maybe we commonly, talked about, is the 5 love languages, in which one is physical touch. This is one of the area where some people will feel being loved. I'm that kind of person. So when I feel the embrace, when I have that touch, I feel that in that, tanda, or in that dance, I feel so connected, so secured, and it's just a very nice feeling that you feel a lot of joy. It's a joy that you can't really explain in words, but physically, and your body just react to it. You feel very, very safe. And I also enjoy the the friendship, and then the love that correlates to the dance, because I believe that majority of our Facebook friends right now, or our current friends who keep our connection, are tango friends, because it's easy that we call our friends for a chat or an afternoon tea, and they are all tango friends. I think tango, to me, I found that keeps me connecting with people, and that's also extending the depth level of a friendship, and also be able to help me make a lot more new friends. It's not workplace friends, it's a friends that we had at a hobby. So I think in terms of how we open our heart, the degree will be much bigger than that, at workplace, because you feel like you have a common language, who's who, the brands of the dresses and the shoes, and who are the good dancers, and who sucks in the dance floor that night, that evening, on that stretch of bench. You already knew, like, within 3 minutes. If because sometimes I would be having friends who ask me, this is a dance which keep 2 persons so close. Would you be able to feel that, for example, somebody is not doing things properly, maybe the hands and things? And I say, don't you worry, because we sit together, and then if ever these things happened, it will be immediately penetrated very fast, like lightning, along the benches, and the ladies will just know, and that person will be lighted. And besides, to be honest, tango is such a great commitment. It's not just that you learned it, within 50 minutes you learn it. You need to invest the time. As a follower would be quicker, I would say a couple of months. But for leaders, because I've spoken with quite some leaders, that took them a number of years in order to excel in the techniques, to ensure that the ladies are comfortable, the form, the visual looks good. And they had invested lots of money and time into it. So leader would not be so easy. If they really love the dance, they won't be so easy to touch that border, that line. So we don't have to really worry about that. So for those who don't really understand the dance and the nature, or be very afraid to start with a dance that is standing so close or embracing so close to another person, I would share these findings with them.
Let's take a look at Maria's dance. This is from YouTube. It was your launch party. I'll play a bit of it. I'll include a link to it in the description, so anyone who wants to see the rest of it. How do you feel looking back on this? This is the book launch party but obviously you had a component to this where you not only talked about the book, but you had to really kind of demonstrate what this was really all about for you.
Oh, that's so funny. It's very kind of seeing myself like that makes me uncomfortable. But I do have a book trailer. I can put a link up. I can send you a link to that has some dancing and some talking about the book and stuff. I think that tango dancers are also really like to do it in public. It's one of those things.
There's a T-shirt right there, isn't there?
Yeah, they do. They like, because that's people in New York City would stop and watch, and I think the tango dancers love it. Like, I don't think anybody was like didn't want people watching them. It is something of like, as you put a lot of work in, you're like, yeah, I can do that. But the other thing that happens, I think sometimes a lot of people see tango in the shows, like the musicals, where people are jumping in the air and spinning, and it's very dramatic. And I have to tell them, like, well, the Milonga might be a little disappointing for you because it's not about the show, it's really kind of about the feeling for the people dancing. So I do think there's a very different idea what the tango is when people see it in these like musicals, Broadway musical type things versus our social Milonga dancing. And I do worry people might be a little bit disappointed by the Milonga style dancing.
Well, there's interesting. I met a dancer teacher who came through Hong Kong, and he was describing this scenario where he saw some old milonguero, and he was like, he did the one step, and I cried. It's like that kind of idea.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, some people, and this is the other thing that people can't wrap their heads around is that like, all you have to know how to do is walk well in the tango, right? Like if somebody's really good at the embrace and just walking, it can feel really good. It can be, as opposed to knowing a whole bunch of moves that you're not so great at that could look fancy. Just like a really good embrace and a really nice walk feels so good. And so to know, like, and I have to say, this is where writing is a very similar thing. A tango, you can always return to the basics. You're just always having to go back to the basics and go, okay, how's my walking? Same thing with writing. Is it a good sentence? And just go back to that basic. Is it a good sentence? And then how do I make it a good sentence? And so I do. I think there's some things to just going. It doesn't have to look fancy to feel good, you know.
When you went to Buenos Aires, and you've also danced in other parts of the world, how did that shift your perceptions, or was that another step in the tango dancer's journey and the dancer's journey?
Oh yeah, Buenos Aires to tango dancers is like Rome to Catholics, right? Like, I mean, it's just you're in the Mecca, and it's phenomenal because first of all, when I was there, and I've been there like 3 times, I'm not working, so I can stay out all night. And so that's kind of wonderful. And so you have a late dinner and then you go out to the Milongas and you can come home at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and you can and it's far less expensive. So you can buy your tango clothes and shoes, you can take your lessons, and and I had a few dances where some of the professionals showed up late at night. And I remember having a dance with this one professional, and it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And I can't even, and it had nothing to do with the steps he took. It was just his access to the center that was phenomenal. And I think that is just something that was incredible and I loved. And, one of my best experiences, I was in Italy, and my tango book came out in Italy, and I was trying to go with a friend, a tango dancer, to the island of Capri for the tango festival. And we missed the ferry. It was bad weather or something. You can take the ferry over there. So we were at our hotel, and the manager of the hotel said, look, there's a fundraiser going on in this tiny little fishing village called Cetara. Do you guys want to come to it? And we're like, sure, we'll go. And there's all this wonderful food and wine, and it's an anchovy fishing village. So we were eating anchovies and pasta and cheeses. And then a tango band set up right there in the middle of the harbor and started playing, and people started dancing. So the old men showed us how to wash the smell of anchovies off our hands with lemons. And we washed our hands and we went out and danced in this harbor as the sun set in Italy. And we were like, okay, we can never again complain about anything in our lives ever. So you never know. You just never know when a tango band's going to start up.
You just never know when La Cupracita will just break out.
Yeah, it's something that, and we missed the one in Capri. We were like kind of bummed about it. And then all of a sudden, here we are, this wonderful little one in a fishing harbor. So, yeah, it's really, I don't know. And that's with all dancing. And that's what I say to people. Maybe you need tango in your life and that's what pulls you in. Or maybe you need salsa or West Coast swing. Like there's just these, but you find happiness, you find community. It's great for your health. And really, when I lived in New York City, New York is very expensive to go out. It's very expensive to go to a club. It's very expensive to go out to dinner. Tango was $10, so you had a pretty full night for $10 entry fee and maybe a glass of wine, right? So it's also, I think it can be quite affordable in many ways.
You talk about the music because that I think is something that people either love or it's not for them. And you can't dance without music. I mean, it's interesting. Sometimes I hear people talk about, oh, we learn the steps and then we play the music so that they get addicted to the steps. And then they try to do a bait and switch with the music. When I talk to people who come through our practica for the first time, I explain the music first, because if you don't like the music, you can't dance. Do you have any kind of sense of that in your own tango journey?
Yeah. Well, that's something somebody told me he wrote a novel, but he doesn't read books. And I'm like, I don't think you can write a book if you don't read books. That to me seems impossible. And I think it's the same way with dancing. Like that's a music. You gotta not just like that music, you have to listen to it all the time because you need to get the beat in your body. I had my first salsa teacher in New York City. It was like his body was an instrument. And the music would start and he would step inside of it and move. And I was just like, wow, it's like nothing I had seen before. And so that's it. The music is everything. And so we can talk about connection and all these things, but the beautiful part is you're wrapped. Everything is wrapped in the music. The music is what is controlling the whole dance floor and each individual on it. And so that's what I would say. If you want to learn this dance, you got to listen to the music and listen to it all the time, not just when you're at class. And I think the more you listen to tango, the more you like it. That's just, it may be unfamiliar at first or sound a certain way. And the composers are all different. You always find there's a lot of variety. And then there's the Nuevo tango, and you can dance that to kind of any kind of music. So, I think the music is hugely important. And yeah, if you don't like it, I would just say find a different dance when you like the music too.
Fiona, Fiona, how would you kind of describe this book to somebody who hasn't read it in the context of the dancer's journey?
I would say it's a book where you find a lot of your own experience into it. So you will definitely find it not just an interesting read, but it's also maybe a way to discover something that you have already forgotten because you have been in a dance for so long. Or it could be something that could heal a person's heart, because there might be someone who is out there who has experienced something which Maria had, or there are people who really was looking for a hobby and really don't have an idea. I think this is the book to read, because even for myself, I've been dancing for over a decade. And when I was reading the book, and some of the terms that Maria was using for those steps, because I know how to do it, but sometimes I kind of mixed, which is what. So it is a good revision for experienced dancers, and for those who actually don't know what a milonga looks like, what the music sounds like. I think it could vividly describe and introduce and be able to encapsulate how tango is. I think it's a very good read.
Maria, do you have a favorite part of the book, Maria, that you wanted to either read to us or just describe to us? I read you my favorite part, the part about this idea of the fixed patterns and melodies and the source.
Yeah, so I think that can I read a little bit of this is just from the beginning, and it's really about sort of the history of tango. Can I read a little bit about that? All right, the origins of the word tango are debated. Some claim it's African and in certain dialects means closed place or reserved ground. Others say it has Latin roots in the word tangere, to touch, and was brought by Portuguese slave traders. It came to mean the places where African slaves and free blacks gathered to dance. In the ports of Buenos Aires, tango grew in popularity, particularly when the Cuban sailors started arriving and introducing a rhythm known as a habanera. By the mid-1800s, so many more men than women had arrived that the port brothels overflowed, and men danced tango with other men, holding each other at arm's length. They had contact, skin, human warmth, the pulse of another person's heartbeat and the flow of his blood. According to some accounts, though, more than anything, they wanted to catch the attention of a woman. And most of the women in the ports were prostitutes. Even prostitutes were in such short supply that they could be picky, charging men for just a dance. If a man danced the tango well enough, she might notice and acquiesce to partner with him. The money he paid her was well worth it. It bought him the touch of a woman's skin, the smell of her hair, the finding of a sort of home, at least for a moment, in the arms of a stranger. In Spanish, the term for the tango embrace is el abrazo, which literally means the hug. This embrace is a hug that doesn't pull too tight, last too long, or promise anything but a song's worth of pleasure. It's neither friendly nor amorous. Much more complex than that, it is a tangle of paradoxes. Tango is a way to learn through the body, to take one's pain into muscle memory, and translate it into something more noble. The contradictions, that comfort could be found among strangers, intimacy felt within a crowd, songs about heartbreak help a person find a way out of it, are embedded in the tango, and it begins and ends with the embrace.
That's profound.
Yeah, I think Ray, when you asked me, going back to the last question that you just asked me, I think what was just heard by and read by Maria is, I think the book also told us a lot about tango history and how it came about, because we might heard different versions. And because Maria had been to Buenos Aires, I'm sure that she had met great teachers and had done good research on that. And that gives us, for those who are really lazy and don't have a chance to really explore and understand the history of tango. And it's a great and resourceful book to read. And even I never, because for those who don't dance tango, they might know about Bandoneon and Piazzolla, but they didn't know about Piazzolla, how he met Carlos Gardel and other things. But in the book, very kindly, Maria had shared with us how and why, and a lot of great information that even as a tango dancers, we might not be aware. And we are now had a good grasp of what these all are.
Great, thank you for that. And yeah, and that was also a great fun part about writing it, is researching that, because it is a global and fascinating history. That in Turkey, Turkey and Finland and all of these kind of tango capitals around the world, that I love that, sort of like a history of the world through tango is what or the global culture of tango is what. And it's like, even though I think it only attracts small groups of people in different places because it is such a commitment, has amazing international appeal.
I described it in an article that was written by one of our dancers during COVID as a sort of like a, revival of tango during COVID. I described it in terms of the context and the history as something that was both sensual and subversive, in the sense that there's this aspect of it that you kind of describe as the connection, but there's also something behind it that is really kind of the other thing that you described, that there's this sort of personal aspect in the terms of the sensuality, but the subversive aspects are all the things that you also talked about in terms of its unsavory roots, its working class roots. A lot of the lyrics are this lunfardo, which is a kind of Italian slang, and it's almost like their version of rap music where they're describing certain things that were in code to prevent the police or the authorities from picking up on what was being said.
Yeah, it was outlawed in many places in the world. Many places outlawed it, and couldn't be done. But it really, I think, I think it was the Parisians who, when it was at the World Expo there, that they just wouldn't let it go. So, and then once the Parisians liked it, then the upper class in Argentina started to get into it. But yeah, it has been. It is a subversive dance, and it's got had a great kind of history throughout the world. And yeah, so I hope people listening to this, if you don't dance it, but you feel called to it, check it out.
Well, just to wrap up this chat, every tango dancer's journey has a beginning, a middle, and I guess in some sense, Fiona and I are in the middle of it. It hasn't come to an end, but it did come to an end for you. Or maybe it's just hit on pause. But maybe describe for us that, like, what is the sort of the trajectory of the dancer's journey for you, and what's next?
Well, yeah, I think mine did go on pause, and I just hadn't gone for a little while, and then and some of it was just not being tired, not going out late at night, but COVID was a big pause for me with tango, and so now I want to get back into it, but I want to do it I want to be able to do both leading and following, because sometimes I feel like if I don't want to like get dressed up and drive across town at 10 p.m. and then not have enough people to dance with. So I feel like if I can lead, then I have that option. And I also feel like it will develop me as a dancer in terms of, I think, musicality. I think it'll be a really interesting way to learn that and to improve in that. And but I feel like this, you do it long enough, you can hit pause. But as you guys know, you go to Milongas, there's some people in there in their 80s. So that's what I want. I want to be dancing. I want to be dancing until I can't walk anymore. That's that's the way I see the ending, is that it's going to be until I'm, in the grave. I plan on dancing.
And just to sum it up, one word, what is the one word story behind Hold Me Tight and Tango Me Home? What is that dancer's journey for you?
I don't know if this counts, but I'd say transformation.
Okay. Maria Finn, thank you for joining us for this podcast. And Fiona, always a pleasure. I'll look forward to seeing you soon. And the book is called Hold Me Tight and Tango Me Home. And you can find it on all the major book-selling sites. And I will put some links to some of the things that we talked about. There you go. And I will put some links to it. And thank you very much. Happy Easter, and thanks again. And I hope that Maria, I will see you on the dance floor, maybe in Hong Kong. And if you do come, I will hold a special event for you at our either weekly or monthly events, and we'll talk about your book and how it has transformed the community as well.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you for organizing, Ray.
Nice to meet you. All right.
Likewise. Take care, Maria.
You too, Fiona.